Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness.
This is episode 126.
We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldimand Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of What's on Your Mind. I'm Julie Wilson, and I'm here with Elise Seifert. Hey, Elise.
Hey, Julie, what's on your mind today?
Well, today I want to talk about something that you and I have had conversations about before, and these are random acts of kindness. Now, they're taken from a site called Mental Health Foundation based out of the UK. And there's some really great ideas of just how you can be kind day to day, week to week, month to month. The last 10 are very simple and just things that you can just do at a moment's notice. So I thought we'd go through them and we could talk a little bit about the last 10 on this list.
I love that. I know every time we visit this article, it just warms my heart.
The first one, give up your seat to an elderly, disabled, or pregnant person. And having been in that situation where I've been 9 months pregnant and on the subway going to work, and you just feel sometimes like, I just need to sit down. It's frustrating sometimes when no one notices, and you're sort of struggling. So I can really understand this. And I don't know about you, but if I do see a pregnant person, I'm always, trying to make eye contact to say, here, do you want my seat? Just coming from experience.
For sure. I know I am such a rule follower. So I'm big on making sure I give up my seat for others just because I know that's a standard rule. But I remember being in South Korea where I lived for 2 years and they just have such a respect for their elders. So when you go on the subway, if someone were to walk on, people would just jump up to give them their seat because it's just such a big part of their culture. And I really respected that. And I think I learned a lot from those experiences.
That's awesome. Awesome. We'll have to talk about that trip sometime.
For sure. And number 42 is to let someone jump the queue at the supermarket. Such a simple thing.
Is that right to do?
So simple. I know when I'm at the store, sometimes you see people behind you, like families with young kids, and it would probably be really nice to give them the opportunity to go in front of you just because, they're trying to get out of there as quick as they can.
Exactly. And also the individuals with 1 or 2 items. Your basket is full and they show up behind you with 1 or 2 items. It takes no time to let them jump the queue and they're in and out instead of waiting for you to go through your whole cart. So the next one, take a minute to help someone who is lost. And I love this, especially if you see a little child. I remember we were at the Calgary Stampede and there was a little guy and obviously had lost his parents. And we reached out to, security and just the look on his face when he eventually was reunited with his parents, but just being able to talk. And my sister-in-law, who was with the police force, she had a little police pen. And so she was chit-chatting with him, trying to divert his attention. And he was so proud to have this pen from the police. It had a little bobblehead with a police on top, but, just trying to divert his attention. But it was just so heartwarming to see, when he reunited with his parents. So
I think that's beautiful. And I bet you turned a really scary situation into something that he will remember fondly. So that's great.
Right.
And I have to say thank you to all of those kind souls who have helped me so many times lost while traveling, especially with translating issues. So thank you to all of those kind people who gave me a random act of kindness. Our next act of kindness is to have a conversation with someone who is experiencing homelessness.
I always tell my boys about this. You know, you see an individual on the street who is sitting there, and I always reinforce the fact that, yes, they may be homeless, but they're human beings.
I think often people don't think about that. They just want to look beyond them, not attract attention.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. But they're human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Say hi, look them in the eye. That's something that I say to my boys all the time if we see someone who's homeless. They're human beings. Be kind. So the next one, this is interesting because you and I talked about this. Help a mother carry her push cart down the stairs or hold the door for her. So we know it's coming from the UK because we don't typically call it a push chair, but I believe they're talking about a stroller. They are heavy.
Yes.
So I think that's a great idea.
I love that. And it's much easier to tag team that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Our next act of kindness is let a fellow driver merge into your lane. I know this can be really challenging if you're ever driving in the Toronto area because there's just so much traffic and it's just so difficult because you just want to get through it. But it does help the flow of traffic as a whole. And I'm sure it just helps to make that person feel better.
I don't know about you, but this one I agree. It is fantastic act of kindness, but I would really struggle with this because I just tend to be an offensive driver, right? And so I'm like right in there. So letting someone, I'd have to work on this. I freely admit that, but it is a very good point. So the next one, pick up some rubbish, again, from the UK. Pick up some garbage lying around in the street. I think that's something we can all do. There's always something on the ground, empty coffee cup, just pick it up, put it in the garbage. It takes no time to do that. And I love when you see groups of individuals, often in the spring, you'll see the sort of spring cleanup and groups working together to pick up garbage that's just accumulated over the winter.
I know my students love to do this in the spring. They'll go around the yard and just pick up any garbage that they find, which is just so sweet that they care so much about keeping our yard so clean.
Exactly. And there's something about pride of ownership or pride of, the school you attend, the church you attend, just having that pride of ownership of you want it to look good.
Definitely. And our next act of kindness is to smile and say hello to people you may pass every day, but have never spoken to before.
I like it.
I know. I always love it. On a hike, there's always people you pass, you go, hi. And it just makes it feel more friendly.
Yeah. And especially if you're working, in a city, I find sometimes folks talk about how, very expressionless, I guess would be the word, right? And why not try? Just say hi to someone. So the next one, return a lost item to its owner. And for those of us who may have lost your wallet or your phone in the past, there's nothing better than if you find it and reach out to contact the individual, especially if it's, a product that's critical to their day-to-day. There's nothing better, no better feeling than somebody reaching out and saying, hey, I found, your credit card, your wallet.
I know when I was traveling with my friend had lost her passport.
Oh, gosh.
We knew exactly where it was. We had been booking flights and it just fell underneath the chair in a lobby. And fortunately, the hotel, we had already moved on to the next city and the hotel was able to send it to us overnight. And that was just the most amazing act of kindness.
Oh, gosh. Yes. Especially in another country, right? Without your passport.
Oh, a nightmare. And our final act of kindness is pop into a coffee shop and ask to pay for a coffee for them to give to someone later that day for free. I absolutely love that one. I could only imagine how great it would be to say, oh, your coffee's been covered.
Related to this, and if we put the Canadian spin on it, going through the Tim's drive-through, you can pay for the car behind you, whatever they order. I've had that happen to me and I've, returned the favor and I have done that for others as well. I think these are all very simple, but very important acts of kindness.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of physical wellness, and we're chatting with professional trainer Andrea Lee about food prep. Nutrition is a very important part of physical wellness, one of the most important aspects. And it's not just about weight control, but about getting nutritious food into us, avoiding things like processed and ultra-processed food. It's well worth it to take time to do food prep to enhance your chances of eating well. Welcome, Andrea.
Thanks, John.
Andrea is certified with the Canadian Professional Trainers Network since 1996. She's also a CPTN practical assessor. Her background is in post-rehabilitation and holistic nutrition. She began her career in Toronto, working with top industry professionals. She now lives in Cambridge, and for the past 15 years, she's been running her own personal training studio. She's received the Cambridge Reader's Choice Award for Best Personal Trainer and Overall Service several years in a row. And Andrea creates her personal training programs based on her clients' needs, whether you're a young athlete, adult athlete, or general fitness enthusiast. Andrea, where is a good place to start to talk about food prep?
I think a good place to start, John, is to think that first we have to go grocery shopping.
Right. I
To
agree.
have food prep available to us in our house, we need to go to the grocery store first. And I think that's why sometimes the ordering out and takeout is become way too popular because we don't make time to go to the grocery store.
I have my own theories on that, probably similar to yours.
There's other
You get
reasons.
home, you're tired. Even if you want to cook, I don't have anything to cook. Or even if I want to cook, that's going to take an hour. But the thing is, a lot of times, what takes an hour only takes 5 minutes here and 8 minutes there and 3 minutes there. It doesn't take an hour of cooking. And so
Correct.
if you've got your groceries and you've got a plan, then you can make it work. So I totally agree with you.
Absolutely. And by the time you were to order something, wait for something, if you have done some food prep, in that same time, you can make a healthy meal. So where you begin is being able to pick 2 or 3 proteins and cook them up. And then the same maybe with a starch. So 1 or 2 starches, you cut some vegetables up, ones that will stay, carrots, celery that you can put in water, cucumber slices, wash your grape tomatoes, cut up some peppers, and then fruits, usually you leave them and just add them in, wash them quickly before you add them to your meal. But if you have some of those things already ready, the proteins and the starches and the vegetables, you can throw together a great meal in the same time as you would order something that's always going to have too much sugar and too much oil in it.
Or at the very least, you don't know what's in it.
Correct.
And
That
I really
too,
want to know.
actually.
I really want to know what I'm eating. We've actually talked a little bit about food prep from time to time,
Yes.
mostly on Flip Side, which is just kind of chatting at the end of the show. And the concept that I always have is you kind of plan out your meals. So like one day I'm going to have chicken and rice and vegetables.
Correct.
Another day I'm going to have maybe fajitas or something like that. So I go to the grocery store and plan for that and then kind of have those meals for the week scheduled. But you're saying something a little different, which is if you get a bunch of different things like the proteins and the cut up vegetables, you have lots of options every day.
Correct.
You know that you're going to be eating certain proteins and stuff, but the options are there to mix them up during the week.
Correct. And that's what I call mass prepping or that bulk prepping.
Gotcha.
So you're cooking those foods up. So your example was great. So say you're planning the chicken and the vegetables, and then the next day you want the fajitas. Well, you already have your chicken cooked, or maybe you wanted some steak
Right.
or something like that, but that's already cooked. So now you're going to take a handful of your vegetables that you already have already cut up, maybe like your peppers, or even better is there's frozen peppers and onions that are already sliced up, but they're frozen. So they're fresh. And then now that's a great fajita mix.
Right.
Your protein's already cooked. You're just going to heat that up. You're going to cook up your vegetables. And now you have your fajita dinner. and maybe you already have rice cooked from the night before, or quinoa or couscous, and something you can just put with it, or you have a big green salad.
Something I've been doing lately, which has really worked for me, I'm trying to eat a little bit less meat. So what do? I've got into beans,
Great.
And lentils, that kind of stuff. So now every Sunday I cook up a batch of black beans that I give an Italian flavor to with some onions and some other stuff. And I have that cooked up. And then usually at lunch, I just throw that on top of what I'm eating, whether it's maybe an omelet, maybe it's just
great.
some corn tortillas.
Yes, yes.
And now more recently, I'm experimenting with tofu, doing the same thing where I'll cook up a batch of tofu.
That's what I was going to say, yes.
Beans and tofu in the fridge.
Absolutely. Because if you had tofu cooked and chicken cooked and maybe had some ground turkey cooked, now you have a choice. Oh, I feel like having a fajita with tofu tonight.
Right.
Or I really want to make a wrap, but have it with tofu. Or no, I'm really craving some chicken today, so I'm going to have that instead. But it's there and ready to go for you.
Yeah, and the thing with tofu, like, it took me a while to like it, but I do like it, but I want to flavor it.
Correct.
And so it takes time because I press it and then I put some herbs and let it sit for a while and then I cook it. So if it's 5 o'clock and I want to make supper, that's just not realistic. Correct. But if I cook a batch on Sunday, it's just there all week.
And then you can heat it up.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's just a little bit different with regards to the meal kit, the prepping of the food and packing it into containers, or what I call the meal kits, almost like what you can, the meal kits you can buy. I find that's fantastic as well because you'll do that mass prep first, but then you may put your chicken and broccoli or your tofu and vegetables and some beans, and maybe that's going to be what you're going to have for lunch. You put them all in your meal containers, and now you have all your lunches are set for the whole week. And what I want people to know is you should go back and forth between those because
between the individual and the bulk.
Yes, because sometimes by Friday you may not want beans and tofu anymore because you already ate it 3 days in a row. But you do because it's already there and you don't want to waste it. But then that's where I find sometimes clients now all of a sudden will stray off of their healthy eating because they're getting a little bit bored and they don't want cold broccoli or something on day 5. They rather have something else. But maybe if you have a really busy week, that might work perfectly for someone's like, okay, the week's really busy. If I just have all these meals in their kits, in their containers, ready to go, I can just leave, grab something. It keeps my blood sugar steady for the whole day. It's perfect. But then the next week, maybe you want some variety. So just do your food prep and put together what you want to put together.
Well, I'm actually living this kind of lifestyle this week because my wife's away. She's in Europe.
Oh,
and so last
lovely.
week, a lot of times when we made a dinner, we'd put an extra one in a container and throw it in the freezer.
Oh, yes.
So then, Monday I had one of the frozen chicken and rice and veggies. But then I didn't really want that yesterday. So I actually made some lentil soup. So I kind of fresh lentil soup and threw in some of the tofu. And then today I had another one of the prep meals. So you're right. It's kind of nice to have the option of moving back and forth.
It is. I tell my clients to do both because both work and you don't have to stick just to one. What's important is that you're eating healthy, whole foods. That's what is most important. So whatever works for you, do what works for you so you feel motivated and you don't feel like, oh, I didn't do this week or I didn't eat all the same things and now I'm just going to not do it at all. No.
The other
flexibility.
Thing that's, ever since I've started doing this, and Sheila does most of the cooking, but I like to cook a lot too. And the thing I found is, I've fallen in love with herbs. So like thyme and rosemary and basil and all that stuff and flavors. And what we find is it's so many times we sit down to have dinner and sure, you can get a nice meal if you order it in. It's like a decent meal for most, but when you sit there and make your own food and you throw the herbs in and spice it up a little bit, you're sitting there and you're literally thinking, this is like I'm being in a restaurant, a fancy restaurant.
Yes.
So you really feel spoiled.
You do.
If you eat like that. Let me talk to you a little bit about what goes in a meal. Okay, so
Yes. Okay.
I learned how to eat nutritiously a long time ago. And the dinners, I can kind of simply say what the average dinner is, which would be a piece of protein that's about the size of the palm of my hand.
Correct. Yes.
And some starchy food, like whether that's rice or potatoes or a piece of bread or whatever that happens to be.
Yes.
I actually-
also a handful, like a cupped handful.
Okay. And I've been actually eating a little bit less. I'm not going no carbs, but I go kind of low carbs a bit. It's just how I feel good. And then fatty foods, so that could be like olive oil or some dressing on your salad or maybe a dozen almonds.
Yes.
But that can go with it too,
Usually about a tablespoon,
right?
1 to 2, depending on the person.
And we tend to cook our vegetables. Like when we fry up our vegetables, it's in olive oil because I just love olive oil compared to
Yes.
other stuff.
And you can use coconut oil too, is nice. And
then the other element is vegetables. And like basically for me, like if it's green, you can have what you want. But
yes,
but
if it's green,
lately I've been kind of
Any
leaning
vegetables.
towards either vegetables or salad, but not both. But I like to at least have,
one or the other.
right.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, does that
absolutely.
sound kind of
Fiber,
like what you're thinking when you're putting meals together?
correct?
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I got the right info.
You do. You do. Yes. So depending on the person's size and how many calories they might need, you could have anywhere, and not that you need to count calories by any means, but basically what makes you feel good and what makes you feel satisfied and what amount of food makes you feel 80% full. That's
Okay.
also something that's really important. Is sometimes we undereat, but sometimes we overeat.
Definitely.
For sure. So if we can aim for around 80% fullness, that's usually what I try to get my clients to do. And that's most of the time. So that could be 2 palms of protein possibly for you in a meal, or it could be half a palm of protein in a meal and half a cupped handful for your starch possibly. And because you just want to have a smaller meal. One thing when I train my clients to eat well is I'd like to get rid of the word snack, only
Right.
because I prefer my clients to keep it as balanced as they can. So I'd rather them have a smaller sized meal as a snack. So it might be vegetables and hummus. It could be a smaller amount of bean salad and an apple. It could be a piece of chicken and some green salad, or a piece of chicken and a handful of cashews. But they're getting some of those macros, and it's not just a granola bar,
No.
which is usually
Right.
full of sugar. So it's a mini meal as opposed to what we usually consider the usual snacks.
Yeah. And I mean, the advantage there is if you're eating that kind of healthy mini meal, between meals, you're controlling your blood sugar level.
Correct.
So it's not spiking and then you don't feel like you have to binge. But the complication about the 80% too, it's interesting because you're sitting down at dinner and you've eaten and you're 80%. And you're like, I'm still a little hungry. But we all know that an hour later you're stuffed. Like even though it
Correct.
feels 80% at the time, an hour later you're full. So
Yes.
that's the hard part though.
Especially
Waiting for
around
that
dinner.
hour.
Yes. Especially around dinner time, because
Yeah.
because you can be eating also because you're stressed. You can be eating a bit more around dinner time because you're tired. So there's other reasons why we do
True.
eat too much sometimes.
Now, we can't stop though before you said something interesting about food and relationships. Tell me a little bit about
Yes,
that. That's
I
kind
did.
of cool.
Okay. This came to me because just talking with clients about food and how you want to have, whether it's a romantic relationship, friendship relationship, business relationship, you want to have healthy relationships. But in relationships, there needs to be some flexibility. There needs to be some give and take. There's times where things are great and going really well, and there's times where things don't go very well. But you continue to work within that relationship. One, we need flexibility. We need to change our meals around. We need to make sure that when a friend asks us to go for dinner, you don't panic and go,
Right.
oh, it doesn't fit into my meal plan. It's like, it's okay. Go for dinner, enjoy that friend and that company with that friend. Eat the best thing on the menu that works for you. And then the next day you already have your food prepped probably in the kitchen or in the fridge. So put your healthy meal together and just continue on. There has to be flexibility like there are in relationships. There are going to be times where you stick to your food plan and you're 100% and it's great. Everything's working with the food plan, everything's smooth. And then there's going to be times like in a relationship where it's crap. And
Yep.
It's crappy. And something, whether it's stress or something's not going right, or you're just really busy and you haven't been able to get to the grocery store and you have had to pick up some food, it's going to happen. And it's okay. You will get back there, but it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you just give up maybe on what a food plan that maybe a trainer gave you because you've hit a little bit of a rocky point. It's okay. It's going to happen. No one is perfect 365 days a year. Nobody.
No.
You have to know that going in. And then I almost feel like it's like, oh, it just takes the stress away.
It does. Like, I like that concept of relationship because, you know, you're like, okay, it's not going well right now. How do I improve my relationship?
How to improve?
But I think to me, the biggest lesson I've learned since I've gone on my weight loss and health kick is that the old me, like, I'm not saying I had this conversation with myself, but looking back, I did. The old me, it's like, oh, I had eaten terrible for a while. Oh, I've eaten, now it's worse. Now I've gained more weight. I don't even care anymore.
Correct.
And then you just fall off the cliff. And now, unfortunately, I've been struggling with weight this year, especially. And I keep getting close to the edge of the cliff, though. And I'm like, and the thing is, you want to say to yourself, how did I let myself get into this position? And I've stopped worrying about that. And I just say, look,
Good.
I've got to make things better. I'm not really happy where I am right now, but I kind of like, I'm not saying it like a relationship, but maybe I am.
You are.
And I'm like,
yourself.
it's not, and I'm not going to fall off the cliff. It's okay. I'm not in a perfect place, but I can get in a better place.
Absolutely.
And we do that with our relationships all the time.
We do, right? We go to our partner or our friend and say, listen, this, I'm off or you're off or something is not feeling right to me. How can we fix it? What can we do to fix it? That's what you need to say to yourself. And then what can you put in place to then fix it? Or do you need some support? Do you need some help? Do you need your partner to use the barbecue? Do you need the kids to help you peel carrots? So if you need that support, then ask for it. But yeah, you figure it out the same way you would figure out a healthy relationship.
The other kind of analogy to that I think makes sense too is I never used to understand how amazing it felt to eat healthy.
Feels so good.
I never, felt the energizing in my body and all that stuff. And so kind of like in a relationship, when it's going bad, you can't imagine it going well. But then if you can turn it around and you've got the relationship with the food working on a better system and you can feel like you feel the love in your body because you
That's a great way. I like that.
So then you're encouraged for a while. And so I find that the periods of not doing great are much shorter now.
Correct.
And the periods of doing better are longer.
Yes, I like that. That is so true.
Okay, well, I think we're at the end. We've been a bit longer. Should I ask you the last question or is there anything else you wanted to cover off?
I just want people to have a healthy relationship with food the best they can and know that there's going to be ups and downs and know that you don't have to be perfect all the time. Oh, I know there's one thing I want to add. If you are going to have a treat or some dessert or a cookie or something that has more sugar in it, have it with your meal. We all go out for ice cream sometimes. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
So do I. But most of the time, try to have a little bit of a treat with your meal or just after your meal. So you're eating it with the protein or with the fat, which helps to lower the glucose spike that you're going to have, and then you don't feel so terrible later.
Okay. So that's your pitch. And my pitch would be, I fear that a lot of people haven't had the great experience of having a nice relationship with food and eating nutritious, healthy food, using meal prep and cooking their own food and adding herbs and spices. So my pitch is, give it a shot. If you haven't tried that, give it a shot. You might love the relationship and the way your body feels when you do it.
Absolutely.
So here we are at the end of the interview, and this is the fourth time I've asked you this question.
This is the fourth time.
It's the same question we ask every guest in a context where we all have areas of wellness that are important to us, but not enough time to focus on all of them at any given time. We do a mini wellness check-in. Andrea, so today, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one thing you can do to foster wellness in that area?
So thanks, John. I think what I would like to focus on for wellness is the intellectual wellness. And I do try to do or listen to podcasts to learn new things when I'm going for a walk sometimes. But one area I do neglect is reading or being able to sometimes take some time off and to go to some workshops. That's something I would like to focus more on.
After not reading literature for a long time, I'm walking and listening to audiobooks all the time now.
Yes.
And for the most part, I'll read like 3 or 4 books of literature, maybe 5, and then maybe something interesting. Getting back into reading has really changed my outlook. And I find that my mind's a lot more creative now because I'm hearing all these authors telling stories and I'm hearing about people's lives.
Nice.
And I don't know, it just seems like unlocked some creativity in me. So I hope that you can get to that.
Oh, thank you. That's fantastic. Good for you.
Okay, well, thanks again for your time. And
You're
we
welcome.
will hopefully see you again one day.
I hope so. Thank you.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of the Adventures of the Starving Artist. I started my day today in a way that I don't usually, and I want to tell you about it because it was pretty cool and it was musical, so that's always a plus. So this morning, bright and early, a little early for my taste, but you know what, totally worth it. I rolled out of bed, got myself cleaned up, and hobbled on over to my mum's to meet her for a quick cup of coffee before the two of us wandered over to the NAC here in downtown Ottawa to take in an open rehearsal for Mendelssohn's String Concerto and some Mahler, which is pretty sweet. And the guest violinist is by the name Ray Chen. And holy moly, can that guy shred the violin. My goodness, I was blown away. The precision, the technical aspects of it, just an incredible player. But that's all well and good, you know, like there are tons of great players. What really took my breath away on this particular rehearsal, and frankly, it was just a performance. Like, they're ready. It's going to be a great show. But what really took my breath away was how engaging Ray was to watch as he's ripping through his parts. The parts that were intense and focused, his brow was furrowed, and he was sweating, and you could see, and there was even a moment where he had a little bit of a breather. He held his violin down, pulled out a cloth from his pocket, and wiped the sweat from his brow and from his violin. So he was working. The parts that were joyful and light, he had a great big smile on his face, and he was dancing around as he played, moving with the music so organically. And you could just see that the music was moving through him as he was playing it. And I think that's the mark of a true pro. Lots of people out there can play super technically, really, really precise, incredibly difficult passages, and they can nail it every time. And that's a huge part of musicianship. Absolutely. But it's equally important to remember, at the end of the day, you're playing music. And Ray had that absolutely locked in. He was a joy to watch. Such a thrill. So, Mum, thank you so much for lining that up. That was a great way to hang out and a little belated Mother's Day hang. What a great way to start the day. Looking ahead this week, I've got regular old lessons going on, but on Sunday, I'm playing my second ever performance at a place called 10 Toes down on Somerset Street here in Ottawa. This one I'll be playing solo instead of backing up another band on drums. So I'm looking forward to feeling out the space and seeing what kind of turnout we get. It should be a lot of fun. When I played there last, the staff were really great, and the turnout was small but mighty and very supportive. So that should be a lot of fun. It's in a very cool space, too. I'll tell you more about it once I've played there and felt it out solo, but it's a coffee shop, bar, and laundromat all at once, and it's got a really cool vibe in there. Lots of like green glass and old wood. It's just a really interesting mix of stuff. So, stay tuned for that, and I'll let you know how it goes. For now, that's all I've got. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We love our listeners and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
Hey, Sheila, you sent me that article on common gym injuries and how to avoid them.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go through the whole article, but let's talk about a few of them because I thought it was interesting.
I did too. I thought it was a great little reminder of how to stay safe when you're working out.
It's a lot of common sense, but still, it's nice to actually think about some of this stuff. So what was the one you want to talk about?
Okay. So the first one was blisters and calluses. So
Right.
it's, when you're lifting those weights, you can get blisters and calluses and how to go about not doing that. The first one.
Yeah, I have one on my kind of ring finger. It's that's the one that seems to get it the most on my ring finger.
Me too. I have a permanent one to the point where I took my rings off for a while to get rid of it.
Did it work?
Yeah, it really helped. But what they suggest is wear gloves,
Right.
which I think is a really good suggestion, and I wish I do that. So maybe I'll try doing that.
You do have gloves.
I do.
I have them downstairs. They're pink. They're cute.
Yeah, they're pink. They're cute. So I should wear gloves. And the other suggestion is to make sure your hands are dry. So you're sweating a lot. Make sure your hands are dry before you pick up those weights. And moisturize when you're not doing weights.
So dry when lifting, moisturize when away.
Yeah, to help protect
And
them.
what do you do? Like, do you actually walk around? So I actually work out here at home.
Yes.
And I don't tend to have that problem because I do kind of a different kind of workout and it's a bit lighter, not too stressful. So my hands don't sweat that much. But what do you walk around with a towel or how does that work?
I don't walk around with a towel, but there's these wiping areas that have the paper towels. So if I'm finding that I'm sweating a lot or my hands are wet, or I'll go grab some paper towel or I'll go wash my hands. I do wash my hands at least twice when I'm at the gym, just because you're going from one thing to the other. You're using weights that other people are using. So I do make it a habit of trying to wash my hands and make sure they're nice and dry.
Okay, well, I mean, just for the environment, it might make sense to bring a rag with you or something that you can just easily dry your hands off on.
Okay, duly noted.
Duly noted. I think that means you'll do it. I don't know. Anyway, what the other one you mentioned was muscle strains. So what are some of the ways to avoid muscle strains?
And this one is, of course, very common when you're working out. So the first one, which made me smile, was make sure you warm up and do dynamic stretches, which I didn't even know dynamic stretches were a stretch until John does them.
Sheila says they're not stretches.
I'm like, what are you doing?
So I was reading a whole bunch of stuff about stretching before running, and it's a whole other debate, but believe it or not, a lot of runners get injured by stretching.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't want to injure myself when I'm not running. And a lot of those are the normal static stretches. You bend down and hold it, or you do a hurdle stretch and go as low as you can, all that kind of static stuff.
Yeah.
I looked into this one article from Runner's World, and it talked about a few stretches you can do before a run. And basically what you're doing is you're moving your legs and stretching them a bit. Now, Sheila says you're not actually stretching them. She's probably right. But the idea is that I read is it starts to lubricate your joints.
And that's exactly what it does. And that helps avoid muscle strains. So way to go, John. That's legit. Now, for me, I would call that like warming up your muscles.
True.
But I agree that, they're not stretching to what I consider stretching is, but it definitely stretches it enough to warm it up. So I think that's a really good suggestion.
Well, where I've landed is, and I'm really bad at stretching. I keep wanting to get into it. This year, again, I'm going to try and get into it. I do think it's really important to do a bunch of stretching, including static stretches. But I don't see that as part of my workout. Like that,
right?
I would either do that after I run or a different time in the day. But I really do think, and I've been really lucky. I'm even afraid to say this. I've gone years without any serious injury from running, and I attribute part of it to doing dynamic stretches before I go out every time. And I don't do a lot. Like, I only do a few minutes.
Well, they also say, which is something that you do as well, is to notice, to be aware of, your body and to notice these little twins and twinks and be careful.
That's a good point too.
Yeah. And the last one that they suggested, which I think is a great idea, is slowly ramp up your weights. Like, don't go right into that heavy weight. Start with a low one and like kind of progressively get into the weight that you need to do. So that's how you can avoid strains. Okay. And the last one we wanted to mention was lower back pain. And the way to avoid lower back pain is first to prepare by doing strength core exercises, which I do think is really important. When you have back pain, it's not always in your back. It's sometimes part of your core.
Because we're kind of short on time, I'll just read the other two. One is keep your form in check and notice signs of fatigue when it begins to break down. So this is while you're actually working out. And keep your ego in check. Don't try and lift weights that you can't handle. And a quick point on the first one on core. So this is saying you should kind of warm up and strengthen your core while you're warming up for the weights.
Exactly.
I think it's important. Like, this is why I always treat core as separate from weights.
Okay.
Core is just so important to so many different things. You should be doing exercises, a few times a week, 5 times a week, just to work your core. And it'll really help you prevent back injury, in my experience.
I agree with you. And I also think it's really good to think about your core when you are doing your weights.
That's a good one too, because lately, and especially after we've had a few interviews with Andrea Lee. And one thing I noticed is if I'm doing the breathing properly, I think, okay, breathe properly, hold my core, and then do my weights. I'm feeling it feels better, and I think it's having better impact.
I agree.
There's a thought. Popped up while running. Thank goodness for these 2 words. These 2 words that keep saving me. Because I have this tendency of, like, I'm pretty good at setting goals and accomplishing them. That's true. But there's sometimes I get in these ruts, and the biggest one for me in the last few years is trying to get back into healthy eating, not snacking after dinner, making sure I'm getting back to my weight exercises, trying to do core exercises. I've been really good at keeping my running going, although even then I was maybe not doing the right kinds of runs, and I need to get back into what I've been doing lately, high intensity interval training and also some hill training. And these 2 words, and the 2 words are starting now, right? Because the old me years back, when I used to not do the things that I wanted to do, and then things didn't go the way I wanted to go, and so when it comes to eating and whatnot, I just put on way too much weight. I would start to think, oh, why did I do that? Why did I make that mistake? And I can never overcome it. But I'm a lot better now at saying, I can't change that. I can't change the past. Okay? So if I can't change the past, but I can change the future, and there's something that I can do, then these 2 words are great. Starting now. And I don't even mind if I have to do it over and over. So starting now, I go for a few weeks, doesn't work so good. Guess what? Starting now. Goes for longer, but still fell off. Now what? Starting now. And the great thing is, more recently, I did a starting now about 6 weeks ago, and it's still going. So thank goodness for those 2 words, starting now. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
Hello, everyone. It's another Flip Side with Elise and Steven. Steven, today I was hoping to talk about one of your love languages.
Oh, yes. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. It is food. And when you say love language, it still is for me, and it certainly is for my family.
That's right. That's something I noticed very quickly when spending time with your family, was how important every meal was with your family. In particular, when we were talking about a trip we were going to take together to New Orleans.
Yeah. So I come from a large family. I've got 6 younger siblings and my parents, so a family of 9. So every night was a production when it comes to food. Imagine that you're cooking your Thanksgiving meal. Those kind of meals happen 2, maybe 3 times per year if you are lucky.
And that's a lot of work.
But that was every night.
Wow.
So when it comes to making potatoes, we're talking about making 10 pounds of potatoes for every meal. When it comes to a turkey, we legitimately had turkey 6 or 7 times a year.
Wow.
For sure.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of planning.
It does, but it doesn't. It's one of those where we need to eat. We need to feed a lot of people. We have a turkey. We have potatoes. We have a couple of people that can do it. We're going to do it.
So does that mean that most nights at your house, all the family members were home and it was a big dinner every night?
No, not necessarily. As you can imagine, with 7 children, you're going to have 5 to 7 different schedules that are going on. So often there would be people that were going to an event or driving them to an event, coming back, and we would set aside a plate of food for those people. And sometimes people would get a little greedy.
Uh-oh.
And they would go into the fridge and they would take a scoop of mashed potatoes or take a chicken leg off the plate.
Oh, no. And I seem to remember a story about a birthday cake being taken.
This is a story that comes up all the time when my family gets together, and it has to do with my dad and his birthday cakes.
So it was his birthday.
It was his birthday. And one of the traditions was to always have a ice cream cake. And we set aside a nice slice of ice cream cake because, of course, he was working on his birthday, as he often did. And we set it aside, and we had a freezer that was outside in the garage. And we put it in there. And he wasn't able to have it the night of his birthday, and he wasn't going to have it until the next day.
Okay.
He wasn't going to have it until the next day. And I think my siblings were around between 6 and 10 at the time.
Okay, pretty young.
Yeah, they were fairly young, and they might have been even slightly younger than that. But what they did was they were sneaking off to the garage, and they were just taking a little sliver of that cake and just shaving, they called it shaving off a little bit of the cake.
Yeah, no harm.
Yeah, no harm. So they started off, and they actually started with the chocolate and the crunch section.
Oh, that's a good section.
Yeah. And they would just take a little sliver, shaving off a little bit. And then by the end, within a day, my dad went to go get the slice of cake that was promised to him. And he looked in the freezer, and he came back and he said, I couldn't find it. And then my mom was like, no, it's definitely in there. I put it in there. So he went back out, and he comes back with this tiny little thin slice of white ice cream. Says, is this it?
Oh, no.
Yeah, my brothers had essentially eaten the entire thing.
Oh, for his birthday. That's so disappointing.
Yeah.
That's heartbreaking. Well, I know that the love for food in your family still is very important today, because whenever we talk with your family, they often ask, oh, what'd you eat for dinner? Or what are you having for dinner tonight?
Exactly. And when it comes to getting together, it's not, what are we going to do? It's, what are we going to eat?
What are we going to eat? When planning our trip to New Orleans, it was, which restaurants are we going to visit?
Yeah.
And the menus were shared with us. So before going, everyone would talk, oh, have you looked at the menu? What are you going to get? And then afterwards, how was your meal? What did you like? So food is so important.
It absolutely is.
And it's such a driving force in your family, which I absolutely love.
Completely. And how about you? What was your experience with that growing up?
Well, mine was a little different. I mean, we had a smaller family. So just myself, 2 brothers, and my parents. And my mom typically worked evenings as she was teaching dance. So throughout the day when we were at school, she would prepare our dinner and put it in the fridge, and it would be individually plated. And we never touched each other's plates because we knew that plate was for one person, and that was just our meal. And oftentimes we would kind of just warm it up whenever we were ready.
Sure.
And then typically once or twice a week, we had a family meal together. So it was a little different because I don't think we were really part of the planning process, because my mom had to plan the meals throughout the day and kind of just had things ready for us. So I think it was a bit of a different experience. And I know we were very busy with extracurriculars after school. So often not everyone was present to eat dinner together.
Yeah, understandable.
Yeah. So a little bit different, but you can really see how your experiences growing up really drives your love for food and your family's love for food.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. It's sign-off time. It's John here with Sheila and Elise.
Hello.
Hello.
Lots of work last week on a whole bunch of fronts. I was doing a lot of podcast stuff. I had some fun and interesting interviews. And we did a session with a new podcast co-host who you'll meet soon. And so it's really great. I'm really happy. We have Sheila, Elise, Nora, Isabel, Sammy, and now someone new, which means that we have a lot of different perspectives and our conversations are flowing in different directions, which I find to be a lot of fun. I really enjoyed my workouts this week. My runs are really working out now that I'm in the groove of doing interval training on Tuesday, 10K with hills on Thursday, a longer run on Sunday, and I'm doing weights 2 days a week. I'm just feeling really good, and I'm hoping to keep that rolling. Also, you'll have heard today about bulk food prep, mass food prep on the interview. And I had a really good day Sunday of getting some beans and flavored chickpeas, 2 different flavor profiles. They're in the fridge. I can just throw them on stuff when I get home. It's fantastic. All good stuff. How about you,
Really
Sheila?
great. Yeah, the food prep is awesome. It's so nice because you can just whip up a wrap so easily now. So I love it. I have good and bad. So I did a kindness by Kate this week. So my niece who died a few months ago, her birthday was March 20th. So every 20th of the month, we do something for Kate, in memory of Kate. So we did a walk. And last week was so hot, like ridiculously hot, but also it rained every day. And it didn't just rain, like it would be beautiful out and then all of a sudden just poosh. So we're supposed to walk at 6 and at 5 o'clock, the skies open up. The rain is going sideways. It's lightning, it's thunder. And I was like, are we going to do this walk? I don't know. Like, and they said, as long as it stops raining by 6, we're going to do it. Well, it stopped raining between 6 and 7. So we got the walk in, we picked up some garbage, everything was great, and then back to rain again. So it was just that kind of week. It rained and then didn't rain.
It's kind of like the tropics now in Ontario where it's sunny, 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 and then pours rain for a while and stops. And it's like, what is going on? This feels like we're in kind of the Caribbean.
Yeah, I'm very worried about that. And then the not so good thing is I was working on Sunday doing a catering gig. I work in a truck. I drive my own this truck all week. And then this truck was a different one. And I was stepping out of it and it didn't have the step that my other truck had. So I ended up thinking that I was going on a step, but I went right to the pavement and I fell out of the truck, which sucks because my knee is getting better. And of course, what happens? You twist your knee and
The same knee.
The same knee. So I am back to, So hopefully I didn't do too much damage, but my knee is a little sore. So I have to be more careful. That's the moral of the story. But anyways, that's me. What about you, Elise?
That's a total bummer. I hope it heals quick.
Me too.
And speaking of tropical weather, we've been getting a lot of tornado warnings up here.
What?
Which I never really remember happening as a kid. It seems to be a new thing. And I heard on the radio today that Ontario is now the biggest location of tornadoes in Canada.
What?
So it's such a strange turn. But fortunately, we are all good. No damage in our property or anything. So that's great. But I had a pretty busy social week this week. I attended a retirement party. I went to a dance recital and I went to a graduation party. So kind of all of those end of the year wrap up things. And it was a lot of fun to see a lot of different people. And then at school, we had our big end of the year field trip. And today we had our kindergarten graduation.
Cute.
Whoa.
The kids made their own little graduation caps and
Yeah, everyone hummed.
we gave out the certificates. It was very sweet. So
The
now
caps
I
are
kind of just feel
flying.
like I'm coasting into summer. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, a few more days.
I do get jealous of you at this time of year. I mean, the rest of the year, I know you're working really hard and all that stuff, but it sure would be nice if I could have a summer to relax.
I'm sure a lot of people think that because the kids are out of school.
Right.
I know a lot of people who are scrounging to try and get activities for their kids for the summer.
Yeah, it's busy.
Yeah. So, well, that's very, very good.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for another week on the Let's Be Well Together podcast. We hope you come join us again soon.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.